In the late 19th century, America stood at a political crossroads. On the surface, it looked like the two party system, the Republicans and Democrats, was firmly in place. But beneath that surface, deep social tensions, economic hardships, and shifting political loyalties were reshaping the nation. In today's video, we're diving into the complex world of Gilded Age politics, a time of fierce party rivalries, rising third parties, and political machines that turn cities into centers of power, patronage, and let's be honest, corruption. Let's get started. During the Gilded Age, the Republican and Democratic parties represented not just opposing views, but opposing worlds. Let's start with the Republicans. Their platform centered around a few key ideas. They were the champions of nativist policies, meaning they wanted tighter restrictions on immigration and laws that prioritized teaching the so called American language in schools. This was part of a broader push for cultural conformity. They also became strong supporters of prohibition, blaming saloons for much of the social decay they saw in American cities. Add to that a firm belief in high tariffs to protect American businesses, a laissez faire approach to government, and commitment to the gold standard. And when you put all those together, you get a party rooted in business interests and moral reform. Now, what about the Democrats? They took the opposite stance on key issues. They were in favor of low tariffs and by the 1890s came out in support of free silver, which we'll come back to here in just a bit. In terms of who voted for these parties, there was a pretty clear split. The Republicans drew their strength from Protestants of British descent, mostly in New England, New York, and the upper Midwest. They also held on to the loyalty of Black Americans and Union veterans thanks to their association with Abraham Lincoln and the American Civil War. The Democrats, on the other hand, were far more diverse. Their support came from Southern whites, immigrants, Catholics, Jews, free thinkers, and pretty much anyone who resented Republican moralizing. As one Chicago Democrat famously said, a Republican is a man who wants you to go to church every Sunday. A Democrat says if a man wants to have a glass of beer on Sunday, he can have it. From the presidency of Ulysses S. Grant in 1869 to William Howard Taft in 1913, the Republicans nearly monopolized the White House. The only exception, Grover Cleveland, the Democrat who served two non consecutive terms. But while the presidency leaned Republican, Congress was gridlocked. The Republicans usually controlled the Senate, and the Democrats usually controlled the House. Only a few times did the president have a Congress of his own party. The result? Political stasis. Congress postponed making major decisions, and new national programs were rare. Meanwhile, the president, despite being the symbolic leader of the country, had very little real power, except for one thing: patronage. Every new president had to make nearly 100,000 political appointments, essentially handing out jobs to allies and supporters. That's how the federal government worked, through favors, not policy. But not everyone was satisfied with the status quo. For farmers, the late 19th century was a time of hardship. Despite the creation of farmers' alliances, debt, low crop prices, and high shipping costs were crushing rural Americans. In 1891, a political earthquake began. A meeting in Cincinnati brought together farmers, laborers, and reformers. Their goal was to create a third national party, the People's Party, better known as the Populists. In 1892, the Populists unveiled their platform in Omaha, Nebraska. And to be frank, it was bold. They demanded the unlimited coinage of silver, a graduated income tax, public ownership of railroads, telegraphs, and telephones, government subsidies for agriculture, an 8-hour workday, the direct election of U.S. senators, and greater voter control through the initiative, referendum, and recall. That year, populist candidate James Weaver carried 5 states in the West. It was an impressive debut, but clearly not enough to win the presidency. Then came the Panic of 1893, one of the worst depressions in U.S. history. It threw the entire country into turmoil and made one issue dominant in the next election: money. On one side were the civil rights, populists, farmers, laborers, and small business owners who wanted the government to coin silver freely. More silver meant more money in circulation, which they believed would ease debts and raise prices. On the other side were the gold bugs, mostly bankers, businessmen, and investors who argued that the United States should stick to a gold backed currency to keep inflation low and the dollar strong. In the 1896 election, Republican William McKinley ran on a gold standard platform. His Democratic challenger was William Jennings Bryan, a fiery congressman from Nebraska who electrified the nation with his Cross of Gold speech at the Democratic convention. In this speech, Bryan famously said, "You shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold." Bryan was so compelling that the Populists also nominated him. But even with that support, he lost. McKinley won 271 electoral votes to Bryan's 176. For the Populist Party, this election was the final blow. Within months, the movement began to completely unravel. While national politics was locked in stalemate, local politics took center stage, especially in America's growing cities. In places like New York, Chicago, and Baltimore, powerful political organizations called machines dominated city government. These machines were built on loyalty, favor, and votes. The most infamous, Tammany Hall in New York City, led by Boss Tweed. Tweed and his allies, many of them Irish immigrants, provided real, tangible help to the poor: food, jobs, housing, and even holiday gifts. In exchange, well, you voted how they told you to. It wasn't clean, and it certainly wasn't democratic in the purest sense. But for many new immigrants, political machines were the only safety net they had. The politics of the Gilded Age was messy. It was certainly contradictory, and it was most definitely corrupt. But it was also deeply reflective of the country's growing pains. As America became more industrial, urban, and diverse, old political loyalties were tested, and new movements briefly caught fire. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.